So, Rishi, thank you so much for joining us and being our guest on our podcast today. Uh, we have an intro bit, but just for you and for any of your listeners, our podcast is called Foreign and National. We like talking to people with minority backgrounds about how they navigate common parts of life, like their career or relationships, what have you, because we find that people with minority backgrounds, people with culture backgrounds, they often have different perspectives that may go unnoticed or may go unspoken. And we want to bring those perspectives to light in both to allow people to relate to it, but also maybe provide a new perspective to somebody who never considered what's being spoken before.
Yeah. The whole purpose of the show, is a duality of being foreign and national. So, like Vibhu and me, we come from a foreign background. I wasn't actually born here even, but we're as American as we can be.
As anybody, yeah.
So, with that, we'll start with a little intro bit, which is always start with me asking Vibhu how he's doing, and then we'll hop into introducing you, and then let you practice. Does that sound good?
Yep.
Awesome. Okay. How you doing, Vibhu?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing good.
Rishi, how are you doing?
Very good. Very good. Great to be on your podcast. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you for taking the time.
Absolutely. Thank you for taking the time. So to give a little bit of background, everybody, you want to introduce our guest?
Yeah, actually, Rishi, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm a high-tech geek living the Silicon Valley dream, work for companies like IBM, Cisco. I'm a mechanical engineer. I came into the country for graduate school. I finished my bachelor's back in India. I went to like a top 20 engineering school, a top 20 school in India, and ended up making it for grad school at the University of Connecticut. Really enjoyed the men's and women's basketball program. I really lived the highlight was watching these games live, being on campus, watching NBA stars like Ray Allen making it big in college, and then making it to Silicon Valley, where I was transferred through IBM. And what I discovered living in a little city like Saratoga was maybe I can make a difference. And I jumped in, became an activist, ended up running for city council, which I never thought I would ever political role was never in the scheme of things for me. Ended up running for council, got reelected with the most votes in city history because we apply the high-tech framework to everything we do, and we got a lot of stuff done. And ended up running for Congress. We fell short by 40,000 votes. So we are making it a run again. So that's a quick summary of who I am.
Yeah,
love it. Great summary.
Missed it. He's obviously a congressional candidate, and we're super honored that he'd be honored to be a little podcast and sharing his life experiences. I think with that,
that's a great segue into, well, basically the first thing that we want to ask you and talk to you about. Basically, you told it yourself. You immigrated from India to America. From your website, it says you immigrated when you were about 22. Is that right?
Yep.
And so that's very interesting to us, your career path from there, because especially being Indian, being Desi, you hear a lot of the common careers that people want to pursue when they come to America are lawyer, doctor, engineer, right? As stereotypical as it is, those are very common career paths. But you pivoted from tech into running for city council and running for, what's your motivation behind all that, especially given how common that is in America?
Well, it's
from our perspective.
It's very common in India to hold office or like go into politics.
Right, government jobs are pretty common in India.
But it seems like here almost like a lot of the people who immigrate from South Asian countries don't have that motivation to be politically motivated. So we'd love to hear how you navigated that and what made you pivot from a highly successful tech career, like you said, into local politics, into congressional politics, and what's kind of shaped your agenda since then.
So let's be quite candid here. When you look at politics in India, they say it's very dangerous. I mean, people get killed and murdered, especially in the rural parts of India, not so much in the urban economies. And so interesting story was, when I was wanting to run for a delegate with the California Democratic Party, and you are a party worker, you get to make choices for the party. And a state senator reached out and said, Rishi, would you like to run? And let's run together. And he wanted us to run as a slate, his team. I said, I didn't know what I was walking into. I said, okay, let's run. And then I heard feedback from people. Oh my God, you want to jump into politics? This was before I ran for city council, and they were like, oh my God, you'll get shot, right? That's the sense of politics that sometimes Indian Americans in this country have. And I don't believe in that narrative, because our country, there is a tremendous amount of law and order that we see, the structure to politics, and there is decorum, even though we might differ. And right now there is a huge amount of bickering that goes out in Washington, but it's
Right.
pretty cordial for the most part. So why would someone like me run for office now? I still have my day job. That's what I've always done. It's a little bit of a juggling game where you are involved with doing stuff in the community. We run lots of STEM programs, Lego robotics, coding programs, or even like meditation, yoga, or Balagokulam. We run all these kind of stuff, and all for no charge. We run this, and then as part of that, you have a family, you have a day job, and then I decided to run for office, which is like, people have been asking me for the last 10 years in my community, Rishi, when do you sleep? Where do you find the time? Where do you find the energy? Right? But this is what makes Silicon Valley special, because the folks who come here, they have I call it a very special DNA pool. They all want to be productive, whether in their day jobs, and someone like me decides to jump out and do something different. And for me, this was a game changer for my life, because I realized that my purpose to be in a role like this in city council is to solve problems. And as a mechanical engineer, I can apply those types of rules, create a framework, and essentially advance problems and make it better. And this is really what I did. So that's what. And at the end of the day, when I'm solving problems, I realize something very simple, that oh my God, I feel so much happier in the world. And it sort of boosted me. I for the last couple of years, we were running a congressional campaign. My schedule was 7 a.m. to 1 a.m. all 7 days of the week, and we never took a vacation, because I thrive on this energy, right? So this is really why I do this, because it makes me happier. I want to make the world a better place, and we have some amazing amount of friends, family, supporters who jump in and help us out. So it makes it a phenomenal occurrence that I really enjoy.
So a few things that I'm wondering about. Your incentive for getting into American politics was you wanted to make the world a better place, for sure, right?
Yep, you're solving problems. There are big challenges that were happening around me, and we can talk about some of them. But things like traffic or housing, or water rates going up drastically, there were big challenges. And I said, okay, let me do my little bit to help out. And what I discovered is, when you apply that high-tech framework, you can get a lot of stuff done.
So if you uh, is there something special about American politics specifically that encouraged you to get into it? Or do you think if you lived in any country in the world, you'd be pursuing politics?
That's a great question. And I would say it's only in America where somebody like me, who comes in on a student visa, an F1 student visa, can run for Congress, because there are too many gatekeepers. There are too many gatekeepers in many different parts of the world, where you have to be an insider to play. For example, in India, you need a party ticket. You need a party ticket, and it's only then you can run, right? Whereas over here, I'm challenging a Democratic incumbent who's been there for 30 years. And the system is meant for everybody to run. You make top two. And then now we have a Dem versus Dem. I got a chance to challenge someone who'd been in office for 30 years. And we made a great run for it, right? So this country, it allows you these types of opportunities, for sure. No questions.
So one of the things I wanted to ask is, you keep bringing up this like tech framework, and how you still are very active in your day job and the STEM reach that you're doing. What are some of the learnings you've taken from like this technical framework? And being I'm a mechanical engineer myself, so I can relate to your idea of problem solving, creativity, creatively and whatnot. So, what are some of these tech frameworks you've taken and applied to politics to sort of frame the way you're running your campaign, running your philosophies and whatnot? I'm curious to see how those two worlds have combined in your perspective.
Yeah. So, I'll talk about, a lot of folks who jump into city council, many of them are either retired or they're looking for something to do in life. And I've seen that very often. It's we do have the go-getters who jump in because they want to make a difference. But, I don't see a great amount of energy in terms of, solving problems, which has been my experience when I watch some of these stuff, right? So what is that high-tech framework? It's about getting things done. And in fact, in 2018, for my re-election, that was the line I had, getting things done. And clearly what I'd done in 4 years was I'd taken on the big challenges. Now, this is what somebody who jumps in from the world of tech does. In the world of tech, what we do is we spend 80% of our effort to solve the top challenges, right? This is what we do. Because if there is a big problem that's going to bring the company down, you will say, drop everything else, let's focus on that, right? Which is really what I did.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so like there were burglaries happening. I said, okay, there is a problem. And I said, let's have neighborhood meetings. I may not have the solution, but let's take that first step. And we took the first step. We started figuring out who are the neighborhood leaders, meeting with them, or sometimes anointing new neighborhood leaders and having them lead charge, launching neighborhood watch programs, putting cameras at the ingress egress points, working with community members to create a technology solution where you have cameras mounted and you take that video data and you put it on the Amazon cloud. It's only engineers who can do that, right? So that is the innovative framework, of how you solve problems. We had a problem with water where San Jose Water Company was increasing water rates and their profits went from $22 million to $52 million in a drought. I said, let's figure out how we can protest. We rolled out a mobile app. It's called Silicon Valley Water on the App Store, on the Android Store. And we made it easier for people to send out protest emails, literally spending 30 seconds to do that because they were sending it through the app, right? So this is the difference that someone like me can make. And that's the high-tech framework of innovation. When people see that Rishi is all about getting things done, he's got a unique approach of solving problems, engaging people, communicating, messaging, and getting them to take action for a common purpose. And then we drop burglaries by 50%, the largest drop compared to any other Silicon Valley city. And we have rejected, reduced, suspended 8 water rate increases. You are demonstrating results, right? So that's the framework of the world of tech that I talk about.
Mm-hmm. So one thing that strikes me is that in the effort to get things done, right? Whether it's to protest against water rates, whether it's to bring the community together to bring down burglaries, you need to motivate people in order to help you, right? How do you motivate people to help you, especially when we've noticed over the last few years that when it comes to politics, well, people can be pretty laissez-faire about it, and that results in some pretty poor results, we would say. Complacency, right? How are you motivating people?
Yeah. So if you take these two problems, which is water and burglaries, you have to communicate to people what the problem is. You have to communicate to people what could be a potential solution, who's the decision maker, and how do we get them to take an action on it and make it easy for people to step up and take action. Simple. It's a very simple, and it's like a cookie cutter applied all the time. Now we have challenges with, like, for example, there was a big development project in the Saratoga Hills, and this was going to disrupt the vegetation and the wildlife. It was a very similar approach. Engage the people, communicate what the problem is, and once they realize the gravity of the situation, the challenge in America is people are busy, people are successful. If you look at Silicon Valley, my congressional district is the most affluent in all of America. People are busy because they are productive. They're executives in the valley. They are doctors, lawyers. They're making a living. But if it needs someone like me to communicate to them that, hey, there's a problem. Once they understand the problem, they are willing to take action because we communicate in terms of the messaging has to be constructed such that how's it going to impact me, right? So this is again,
so your lesson is that whatever complacency, at least in this district, that may have existed before, is simply solved for by just telling people what the problem is and how it's affecting them, and that wasn't being done effectively before.
Yes, I think part of the problem that elected leaders have is adequate communication. I see congressional, our U.S. House of Representatives, they're sending out their update. It's a long email with a lot of stuff. But my emails are about, here is a problem statement, here is a solution, here is action, right? Simple. It's very easy to read. People read that and say, okay, good, I get it. Let's go out and do it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's great.
Keeping it short and sweet is
really an effective strategy.
It's cool, when you have like this.
Well, you guys are very kind.
You're not going to read it.
I'm sorry, my emails tend to get verbose, but the top part, if somebody reads the first few lines, they'll get the agenda of that particular email. And then there is a lot of content there for them to read and take action. But, it's, I haven't figured out, as an engineer, I don't know how to keep things short, unfortunately,
Yeah, that's okay. What I was going to ask you is, have you found that your approach to advocacy through technology is a stark contrast to what's been done in the Bay Area? Or are you seeing a shift in Bay Area politics where they're moving towards app platforms or different technological platforms to spread the word? Like for you and your challenger, for example, have you seen that that's been your biggest differentiating factor, is that you're able to leverage the Silicon Valley culture, which is obviously rooted in technology and keeping up to date through social media apps, whatnot, Twitter, obviously is a
TikTok,
I guess. Is that been something that you've used to differentiate yourself from like other challenges in the area?
Absolutely. I think the short answer is no, I haven't quite seen that, right? I mean, I always say that the public sector is a laggard when it comes to keeping up with the private sector, or in terms of there's a big difference between how corporate America or Silicon Valley companies function versus a public sector organization in Silicon Valley, right? So there's a big difference. I think the public sector has caught up with social media, but that's about it. I think we can do a lot better.
So I'd like to pivot the conversation and ask about something that you touched upon a few minutes ago, when you said that that when it comes to Indian politics, there's this concern that Indian politics can get quite violent, but at the same time in American politics, well, you've had the opportunity to come in on an F1 visa, and this person who came in on his F1 visa can run for American politics. Touching on both of those points, the US has clearly been through a lot in the last 4 years, right? All of it culminating into the attack on the Capitol that happened a few weeks ago. I'd love to know, do you think that from a minority standpoint, do you think that would encourage more of us to get into politics as a way of realizing that we need to also be at the decision table? Or do you think it'll back people off? And do you still think America is an alluring destination for other immigrants such as yourself?
There's a part B, and the answer is no, because the challenges with immigration, turning, it takes forever for someone who comes in on, let's say, on an H1 visa or a student visa like me, to turn that into a green card and citizenship. It takes 15, 20 years. So the top talent looks like are not coming to America. They're going to Australia or Canada, right? So that's part B. Part A is, with the what happened in Washington on January 6th, is that going to make us a little uncomfortable with politics? I doubt it, because that is an anomaly. And in fact, I believe it has bolstered the spirit of Indian Americans to get involved with politics, because we need to have our say, and we need to make sure that our voice is heard, and our voice is very unique, because the background that we come from, I read so many books of Mahatma Gandhi, I went to, when I was a kid, I had gone to one of his museums, I picked up books, and you are influenced by non-violence. You are really trying to see how you can express your voice without having to go fight. And the similar ideologies of Dr. Martin Luther King. And when you look at, even for example, the religion that we have, it has survived the test of time. There were so many invaders who came into our country and they tested us, but the religion has survived strong. But it's not really a religion. It's a philosophy. Hinduism is a philosophy of how you conduct life. Let the people be, right? So we have a very unique culture and offering that we have for America. And I think it has fired up Indian Americans to run for office. Like, you look at the Bay Area, and we had, for let's say the mayorship in San Ramon, we had like 4 Indian Americans who were running for mayor of San Ramon, which is a phenomenal story. And then you look at Congressional District 17, there were 2 Indian Americans running head to head against each other. So I think, we have discovered, in fact, the reason why we get so many volunteers who join our fellowship, our internship program, and many of them are Indian Americans, because they want to see the politics from the inside, because they feel that, hey, if Rishi can do this, I can do it too. And that's really what is motivating people. I think over the next few years, we'll see a lot more people, a lot more Indian Americans jumping into office. In fact, one of the reasons why, I remember, let's go back many years ago, my son was interviewing Ash Kalra. And this was when I was still on the planning commission in Saratoga. And we were talking about politics. And then he said, what do you do? And I explained to him, I work for IBM. I'm in the planning commission. He's like, you should run for city council. And I was like, no, that's not for me. Politics is not for me. And he got almost like upset with me that, Rishi, if you don't run, then how will you open up the path for the next generation of Indian American leaders, people like Sean, like Vibhu? One fine day, if you are not the role model, if you don't open that door, how will you make that happen? Like in the Bay Area, I give a lot of credit to Congressman Ro Khanna and to Assembly Member Ash Kalra, because if they had not jumped into office, someone like me would not dream of running, right? So that's the reason why I believe that we'll see a lot more, because there are enough role models out there now.
That's genuinely really inspiring.
That's a very good point.
One thing I want to ask you, this is something I always like to have our guests do, is, if you can talk to someone in your shoes 20 years ago, or whenever you decided to, or just someone growing up in the tech world, what word of advice would you give, and what would you tell them on how to navigate their life through tech, politics, however? Someone who wants to make a change, more or less.
Specific to politics or about anything else?
Let's keep
both.
Yeah,
I'd say both.
Okay. So the one mistake I did was, I call it living in a cave. As a mechanical engineer working for IBM, I would do my job and say, okay, I'm doing a great job, and that's all I need to do. Let's take care of family. And what I realized was, when I started giving to the community, when I became open, and true story is, when I wanted to apply for the planning commission, my wife said, Rishi, you'll make a fool out of yourself, right? I mean, that is like, she looked at me, is like, what are you doing? This is not for you. I mean, she knew me well, but you know what I did? I challenged myself, because I truly believed that, I did not belong there, but I said, let's explore and see what comes out of it, right? So what I'm talking about is, we have a little black box, we operate in that black box. Let's extend the black box just a tad bit, every month, every year, every hour, you extend it just a tad bit, and we discover an empowerment that is tremendous when we can extend it just a bit, stretch it out and see how it feels like. Maybe it comes back in, but then you stretch out and you feel, oh, I loved it. In fact, that's my story, because I realized that I was stretching the boundaries of my cave, the cave in which I lived. And I said, this is so much more empowering. I feel so much happier. And I took that learning and applied it to my day job. And I became so much better in terms of my messaging, in terms of how I communicated, how I interacted, how people perceived me. So that is a game changer. I guarantee you this, This is the most important thing. And if Indian Americans across the United States realize this one thing, they would be much more willing to jump in and try different stuff out. Because also what it does is it creates that feeling for the kids as well. Somebody who's watching a dad or a mom, that if they do this, hey, I can do it too, right? And that's a very, very important learning.
So if I were to summarize, I'm coming also from the perspective of people who work in tech, especially those in engineering roles or product roles, it's very easy to get complacent because the salaries are usually higher than average in America, because you live in affluent areas or you live in areas where you can afford above the average standard of living. It becomes easier to be complacent about your community because you're doing all right. So if I'm hearing you correctly, and let me know if there's more or if there's something else, it sounds like by empowering your community, by pushing yourself, by inspiring change, one, you feel better yourself, right? Because you are making change and you're pushing your boundaries. But two, you're also serving as a role model or an inspiration to those who are looking at you to go and make their own change as well. And iteratively, that just betters the community, better society.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
And I think that's the point. Yeah.
Yep. A, B, but there is a part C. What you just said,
Okay.
A and B, part C is this. When we go out there and we give ourselves to the world, what is written in our books, in the books of Hinduism and the Rig Vedas and Atharva Veda, when you go out and give something good, you get 10x back. You get 10x back. And they've written it in so many different ways, right? And this is really what happens, because when you are out there giving yourself to the world, the kind of change and transformation that you go through is a game changer, because you take this and you can apply it to your day job, for example, and you can be a lot more successful. And sometimes what I do with our Indian American population is there are two contexts that I lay out when it comes to engaging them with respect to what I'm doing here, right? It's like, how will this impact your day job? How can you take that learning and apply and become a lot more successful as a Valley executive, for example? Or secondly, how can you take this and make it easier for your children? How can you inspire your children? How can you open up doors for your children? How can you get them empowered as well, right? So that is part C of the whole thing,
Absolutely. I mean, Vipul and I just recorded an entire episode about, how the traditional career paths of engineer, doctor, lawyer is always a good starting place, but expanding your horizons and following your passions, whether it's empowering the community, seeking, personal fulfillment, and whatever it is, as long as the path is happiness and making the world a better place, I think definitely is just such an important topic. And the idea of the box that you mentioned, that's something that I've discussed a lot with my family, and Vipul and I've talked about it too, but breaking out of those bounds that, society kind of wants to force you into sometimes, or expectations want to force you into, breaking out of that and making a change like you have, like Rokhanda has, I think is exactly what we need more of.
Yeah, and we keep building on it, and hopefully, our generations will continue to be higher members of American politics, or really whatever industry.
If a podcast like this can change even one mind, I think we've done our go. So hopefully we're inspiring someone to go pursue their passion, whether it's, politics, community outreach, or anything, any sort of art, entertainment, whatnot. But yeah, no, this is amazing.
This is great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Rishi, just want to give you a warm thank you one more time for coming on the show.
Thank you so much.
Sharing your perspective and background.
And of course, best of luck with your upcoming congressional run.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Really, it was my pleasure. And I'll leave you with one thing, that if you do something fun, that you're never ever working a single day of your life. You're just having fun.
Right.
And that's what I think, we should all try to get there, right? And then people might say, well, where's the money, right? If you do something fun, you'll figure out a way to make money. And what I would like to leave you with one final thing is, we have put together a phenomenal program as part of our run. It's a fellowship program. Lots of students from college and high school are joining us. And there are leadership opportunities even for adults in the community. So join us. My website is rishikumar.com. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much.